Question simply remains now is, how does humanity create courts of law that are based on morality, based on love, based on equality and sharing? That is the question. If we are to change the current system, that is what needs to be transplanted onto the system. Courts of law that are based on equality and morality, run by the people. If we can't do that, we need to build our own systems outside of the current system. So many that the current system loses all of its power. Hey guys, so I'm currently in a not so sunny Hamburg. It's raining all day today, and I'm staying at Fritzi's mother's at the moment. So I've got some time this evening to express myself, because I hadn't done a video for a while, and someone said something on the last video I put 2 videos on. I haven't done a video where I speak about how amusing, if you like. Someone put a comment on the last video I put on where I put the footage in of the children breaking stones, basically doing hard labour, bashing at a rock with a hammer till it turns into gravel so they can sell it, and they get very little for that, like 10 cents a day. So terrible way of life for anyone, even for a criminal. Black and white movies show criminals doing this, and this is what children are subjected to every single day out in Tanzania. And someone asked me, is poverty a crime? I think they were making a statement, actually, because I think they're wise enough to not be asking the question, but regardless, they did put a question mark on, and I'd just like to answer it, for all I think they were making an obvious statement. And this is a tricky thing for me as well, because this is a subject, and around this subject I've spoke about in the past, and I stopped doing videos in that avenue. The last one I did one on the Paris attacks, and I took them down, and it kind of tied into what I want to speak about regarding, is poverty a crime? And I made a decision to do that because I am the voice for these children. And I fear sometimes, and I probably shouldn't. I really probably shouldn't, and maybe I'll have to overcome that and find out by trial and error. But I often worry that by speaking about those things, I could take help away for the children, because I am their spokesperson and I have to watch what I say. I don't know if that's correct, or whether that's just me allowing fear to rule my ability to speak freely about things. It might be. Let's see how things go with that. So is poverty a crime? As I say, everyone often says there are the elite or the bankers, and they know these people exist, but they don't know who they are, and they don't know what they've done, they don't know what they're doing. And to put things into very simple terms that a child could understand, is poverty a crime? If you had a man or woman, whoever, sitting on a hill with a fence around it, and they had all of the resources they could possibly require to live a comfortable life, to live a life where their needs are fulfilled, the needs of their children are fulfilled, the education of their children are fulfilled, and any other needs that they add on to them are also fulfilled, such as breaks away, travelling, things that are not needs, more desires, not utilitarian but desires. And then they make a conscious decision to still hold on to their resources instead of sharing it with those persons outside of their little hill of wealth and resources, without giving a reason to the rest of society why they must do that, then I say that's criminal. And I'm not the only person to have said this. Jesus said it. It was said, if you have 2 tunics and one man has none, then you must give him one. Sharing. You've got to learn how to share. So of course, to me, poverty is criminal. And there's a quote I really love from Saint Basil, where he said, we call a thief, but the money you hoard up and the shoes that rot in your closet belong to the poor. So are the rich not the biggest thieves of all? And it's very true. Now sometimes we do it unconsciously and we don't share the things that we have. But others are doing it consciously. And there's no argument in that. Now, some interesting things that I know in the line of what I do. One of the things I battle with every month is finding the money to provide the medical care for people over there. Predominantly children. More recently, we had the 3 little ladies who needed operations to increase their chances of survival with the spina bifida that they have. And due to legislation, they weren't allowed to have it because they didn't have money. I mean, how does a baby, an innocent child's life be determined by the persons it's born to not having a job? It's pathetic. It's inhuman. It's not right. But why is it happening that way? Is no accident. Nelson Mandela said this: poverty is no accident, it's man-made, just like apartheid, and it can be fixed by men. Poverty is one of the greatest crimes ever. And it's a man-made thing for control and power. And there are elite families that I could go on all day naming, and everyone knows the stories of the Freemasonic powers and the elites and the bankers and the banking cartels. But what they don't understand is the design of the poverty, which I've mentioned in the videos as well. And how can I ever tackle the issue of poverty is what I've come to think in the last weeks while I've been having some time to meditate and dwell on things and how I'm presenting myself in the public on YouTube, because this is where most of our help comes from. How can I tackle the problem of poverty unless I talk about the head of the snake of poverty? And this is where I'm coming back round to now, that I must talk about them. You have to. And I won't refer to them as bankers or elite. I'll refer to them by name. I'll refer to them as the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. I refer to them as the Bundys and the McDonalds and all these families. They're easy to find out about, but people don't understand how critically they've designed your planet to pillage and rape people so as they can be elite. And those that give them the power to be elite and to pillage and rape are those who are feeding them through their ignorance by buying into what they're putting out there. Even down, it's such a complex thing, but even down to the soldiers who sign up to armies, which are private armies expanding empires, but they don't see it. You just need to look at England, the Crown of England. People swear allegiance to the Crown. The Crown of England is a conglomerate of corporations in the centre of London that is not part of the United Kingdom. The average person doesn't even know what on earth that means. Or what that actually means is that, and they have their own police force. It means that the core of England and the core of global finance is governed by itself, without the laws of a governing body or without the laws of the United Kingdom in private courts. Which means the layman has no hope of getting in there and having any say in what's happening until you bring it down and change it. That's the financial centre of the planet. The pound is the strongest currency. And I've got a lot of people who have asked actually about this, and I admire that you ask me, and I'm grateful that you feel that you can ask me about such a thing, because I haven't spoken about politics that often as I would like to, actually, because I often see politics as a pantomime to distract people from the reality of things. And the current thing at the moment is England going to vote out of the EU? To give them some illusion of freedom or some way to move a chess piece to get the world's consciousness to do what they wanted to do. England was never in the EU to begin with. We joined the EU, but we hung on to the pound, so we stayed financially superior because our currency remained the strongest currency on the planet. And it had to, because the Crown of England, a privately owned corporation which is not governed by UK law, controls the finance and the financial centre of the planet. And of course, as I've mentioned in other videos, you move over to America and Washington DC is not part of the United States of America. It is not governed by the laws there. You move over to Vatican City, the spiritual centre of the planet. It's not an accidental design, and thus poverty is indeed a crime, but against the laws we answer to, that we in ignorance among us, those who apply to be police officers with well-meaning hearts, then serve immoral laws and enforce immoral laws. They enforce immoral laws that say that it's okay for a person to hoard resources and allow children to suffer and die in terribly slow manners such as starvation, or from sicknesses that can be easily cured because they won't share. Because our laws are put in place by these centralised institutions that no one even knows, and not governed by the same laws that they enforce upon the persons serving those institutions. If we were to have a law of morality in the law of man, there's not many moral laws in man's laws, in human laws. There are not many at all. An interesting thing that I discovered is that 1.5% of the liquid wealth of all billionaires on the planet, now liquid means the free cash they have, not investments, not stuff tied up in vehicles, in properties, in companies, but liquid money, numbers in a bank account or pieces of paper we've assigned value to. 1.5% of that wealth collectively would cover the medical deficit for all children on the planet. Just think about that for a second. Not just children, men and women and children. My mind goes to children because that's what I'm trying to provide medical care for constantly, most of the time. And yet I find it's the layman who is the one reaching out. For these men are of this world, and of this world the men of Satan. That's how they would deem it in Christianity. Men of materiality. Now they can be reached and they can reach out and help people, but most of them are not willing to. They don't care to. 1.5% of numbers that sit idle in bank accounts can end suffering based on the need for medical care. And until the layman starts its own law system, until there's some dismantling of the current economic system, and until humans with moral hearts, but with a sense for justice, can rise up in some form of power and stand against these banking cartels who are printing the money and enforcing these ridiculous rules and regulations to allow them to remain elite and to have control of resources. And to say, right now, this planet is governed by a moral law. If you're so subhuman that you can't share your billions of pounds to end the suffering of men, women and children all over the planet, then we are forcing you to hand over all of your wealth, and you can join the poverty-stricken of the planet, and you can see how it feels to have nothing other than the faith that hopefully today you're going to end up with some flour so you can mix it with water and eat it tonight with your children. I would love to see that come to manifestation on earth. To show people And I'm not even saying that they're necessarily bad people, because a billionaire, I can only begin to imagine how material your life is and how attached you are to that for your happiness. But if we had courts and laws built on morality, we could give them a taste at least, even enforce that as a 6-month punishment, and then allow them to go back to their wealth and see if they're willing to share then. And if they're not, then take it off them. Make it as fair as you can, to give them an opportunity to become human beings instead of human animals. So is poverty a crime? Of course it's a crime. But the problem is, it's a designed crime. It's sat down at tables with the elite, and it is planned and orchestrated. And you can see that in how the world is set up at the moment, with these areas which are very cleverly disguised from the public as not even being part of the countries that they are governing, not even being governed by the same police force that governs the rest of the country. A private police force governs the centre of London. And they control the finance. And as Rothschild said, I care not who makes the rules of a country, let me control its money. Because when you control that, at this present day, you control it all. And the problem is, when you're that wealthy, you can influence government legislation to your benefit constantly. This is just a fact of life. So when it comes to things like, do you stay in the EU or go out of the EU? It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It wasn't in the EU to begin with. What you should ask is there another way to do this without a privately owned central banking system that controls every aspect of our society's resources? Because until that's changed, it's all just pantomime. And until that's changed, then criminals rule the planet. And poverty is a man-made crime by those criminals. And I try to be loving towards all men, but I have very little respect for those people. But I also have empathy for them, because I know from my own life that having a little bit of money can sometimes go to a person's head. So having a lot of money, I can only begin to imagine what it does to their minds. So. Question simply remains now is, how does humanity create courts of law that are based on morality, based on love, based on equality and sharing? That is the question. If we are to change the current system, that is what needs to be transplanted onto the system. Courts of law that are based on equality and morality, run by the people. If we can't do that, we need to build our own systems outside of the current system. So many that the current system loses all of its power. That all of those people that join the army in the hope for a living to support their families, all those people who join the police forces to enforce these horrible laws and to fight these horrible wars, they don't need to, because they can be provided for by other systems that we've built around the planet. Ones that have their own forces, that don't even require policing. That's the two ways I can see to do it. So, it's a long way off, but I'm sure we can get there. Anyway, I'm going to get off. Much love, guys.